Hello and welcome to this week's session. Sorry, I think there were some technicalities there and I was actually going live on a different section and not this link. So there we go. I think we are back in and I'm super excited to be here with you guys for this week. I'm really excited to go over a couple of topics that I find really interesting at this current point in time. We've got a lot of news that's coming out, especially from both a fundamental as well as a technical perspective. So let's dive right into it. I've already have spent a bit of time on another stream, so I'm happy to be back and let's go forward into the sort of fundamentals and the technicals. So I was actually just mentioning now, this has been quite an important week for us. We've got both the NFP as well as what we just had about 20 minutes to an hour ago, and that was specifically ADP. Now, ADP's non-farm employment rate change actually just came in at a whopping 258,000 versus their forecasted of around 110. So this is pretty much quite a bit of a spanner in the woodworks, if I'm being completely honest with you. We've got NFP coming out on Friday, and they are actually forecasting a major decrease month on month. So last month we had a really impressive 258,000 jobs or 254,000 jobs added. This month they're kind of forecasting around 100,000 more or less. So now it kind of begs the question, are we going to get sort of that, revision data coming in later on? Is there going to be some technicalities that we are not really forecasting at this current point in time? And I'm very interested to see how that is going to affect us going forward, right? We also just had advanced GDP come out for the US about also an hour ago. Now, that result has been coming out flat at pretty much 3% for the last couple of weeks now. So that result came in at 2.8%. Now, that is 0.2% less than what was forecasted and what was previous. So now this begs the question, actually, do we run some sort of risk in terms of stagflation right now? Basically, what that means is when you get consecutive periods where there are pretty much flat or no growth opportunities happening in a specific country. In this scenario, it would be the US, and potentially less. So we just actually had it come out less. Now, that is a big sort of risk area for me that I'm going to be kind of watching out going forward, because we are kind of a bit wary if inflation is going to go higher than expected, and if it does start to go higher than expected, what will happen then? So that is going to be the major sort of key question to kind of go through in these next kind of weeks. We've also got the Fed that has to kind of make a decision in terms of interest rates going forward as well. Are they going to cut again? How much are they going to cut? They've signaled that they want to decrease interest rates by at least 1% this year, and we've already had a 0.5% cut. So, with only a couple months left in the year, how much is the next cut going to be in the next FOMC meeting? We will just have to wait and see for this time being. So for this current point in time, I think it's going to be quite interesting to see exactly how this NFP data comes out this week. We've already seen in the past a kind of miss on that NFP data has been quite dramatic for both traditional as well as cryptocurrency markets. So that is going to be quite an interesting thing to keep your eyes out on, and I'm going to be really eager to see how that data point in fact comes out. So let's dive into the technicals a bit. I've got some interesting pairs I've been looking at I thought might be of interest to you guys as well today. I can see there's a lot of questions coming through in the chat. That's great. That's great to see. Please keep them coming through. I will take some time later today to get back to you on some of these points as well. But I thought let's just dive into kind of the technicals that we were going through on Bitcoin specifically last week. And I thought it would be quite an interesting one to go over, considering we are nearly trading at new all-time highs again. So that is quite a monumental sort of stepping stone for Bitcoin at this current point in time. We've pretty much seen this push back into the upside, and I was kind of mentioning this in my last stream with you guys, that I really wanted to see price action make some sort of clear determination to a specific area or sort of idea, and really kind of pick up the bulls and pretty much take that momentum with it into either new price discovery regions, or if we're going to clear the lows, like really go through with it and clear it, because we've been stuck in this range for pretty much the last couple of months, and we actually haven't seen much price development happening through that time either. So it's been quite an interesting sort of period to be in right now. We had this sort of trend line that I was explaining last week. We kind of broke out of it, retested it really nicely. That kind of aligned with this area of interest over here. So we pretty much had this resistance area acting at around $66,000. And if you pretty much have a look at that, we kind of broke through this. So last week's live trading session, I was actually discussing with you pretty much where we were sitting, which was around about here. And I was quite eager to see how this sort of internal resistance area that is now turned into support would hold going forward. You can see we kind of rejected this really nicely in here too, and you can kind of tie that in with this sort of descending trend line here too, and we pushed out of that area. Now we broke through this major key psychological level of $70,000, which is something we were all quite eager on seeing, and pretty much since then we've broken through. Didn't really stop that much in that area, to be honest, and we have traded into new sort of price discovery regions within this leg. So we kind of find ourselves now in this internal resistance area at around 73,000. So almost pretty much a couple of $1,000 off making new all-time highs. You know, for this kind of price momentum and volatility that's picked up into the cryptocurrency specifically now, I'm going to be eagerly watching to see, do we continue higher, and by how much do we continue by higher? Because right now, you know, a lot of forecasters and analysts are saying, you know, we're going to go to 100, we're going to go to 150, we're going to go to 200,000. You know, for me, this is where it gets kind of tricky. This is the part of the market, specifically the cycle time, where it becomes, I think, the most difficult, because you're trying to forecast and analyze where price is going to go. However, you don't really have any previous structure to work with. So you don't have what's happened in the past. There's no previous areas of support, resistance, areas of interest, whatever it may be. So that's kind of now where it gets really tricky, because there is obviously a lot of extension areas we could move into. However, we need to also be quite cognizant of where we are in terms of the cycles, right? So we've got about another year or so, more or less, in terms of, I would say, at least bullish upward movement within the space. You know, whether that be with Bitcoin specifically, or whether that kind of filters and alters into the altcoins itself, that could be a whole different sort of, you know, debate on its own. You know, we can already see a lot of altcoins still lagging, and I was actually just doing my daily technical analysis for you guys to be posted after this. And I was looking specifically at Ethereum, and you can kind of see here, Ethereum in the past has been quite the leading sort of indicator for altcoins, specifically, you know, the majority of the bigger altcoin caps, and the ones that have been specifically also been around for a lot longer, right? And if you can have a look here, you can see we are pretty much still also nowhere near all-time highs. We're nowhere even near the high that we made this year. So it's kind of begging the question, do we kind of still continue to see Bitcoin driving through new price areas, making new highs, you know, kind of pushing into these price discovery regions? Or do we start to see a bit of a shift? I am very much in favor of seeing some sort of shift. If you look at the likes of Solana, you know, that's, I would definitely say, some type of anomaly in this sort of bull market we've had so far. We saw price trade up as high as $210. And I mean, in terms of price discovery, right, you know, where do we go to from here? Is Solana kind of our leading indicator for alts going forward? I don't know. These are all the questions you need to kind of ask yourself, right? Where are you positioned? Where do you think price will go? And if you have a look at a lot of the other altcoins, even for example, if I have a look at Ripple, XRP, if I have a look at Altcoin, ADA, the likes, they are all really, really low in terms of their previous kind of cycle moves. So do we kind of see a bit of a pickup in space, in trading, in volume within the alts? you know, it would be really nice to see. I mean, if you have a look at ADA, for example, on this monthly time frame, you can see we are pretty much down at 30 cents and have all-time highs sitting at around $3, you know. So do we see price trading that high for some of these altcoins going forward? I don't know. That's kind of the $1,000,000 question, right? Do we start to see some sort of cool off, you know, from BTC and that money kind of flowing into the alts? That would be really great, you know, considering the cycle time we're in. But then we also need to be cognizant and remember that we are also sitting in this really interesting macro landscape right now, where we've got pretty much, you know, you've got elections coming up around the corner. You've got the Fed cutting interest rates. You've got the potential risk of inflation kind of going higher. You've got the potential risk of stagflation, where the US economy is not seeing any growth. You kind of seeing these inflated NFP data results. So like, this is all really a lot of things going on at once, especially considering the timing in which we are sitting right now. I did see some interesting sort of posts and kind of analysis that post elections, we've kind of seen a bit more clarity in terms of how these cryptos are pushing through in the market. We're seeing better volatility come in. So maybe it's just a case of waiting for the elections to kind of, you know, pass over and subside, seeing what sort of the results are come in, you know, who's going to be the next presidents for the US. And maybe that kind of drives sort of price for both crypto and traditional markets. I mean, if you have a look at the S&P 500 right now as well, you can pretty much see, you know, we are trading at new all-time highs as well. We're pushing higher pretty much most days. You know, we're getting these short pullbacks where price is kind of temporarily, you know, respecting areas within the 50% region of, say, your Fibonacci tool, and kind of then just pushing higher. So it's really difficult to kind of capitalize on these moves if you're not really actively trading them day in and day out. Another one is gold. If you look at gold, we pushed through into new all-time highs again yesterday, right? So if you can remember previously, I was looking for some sort of pullback into this, you know, resistance slash now turn support area. We didn't even get there. We declined maybe 1 or 2% on the day, and you know, that was kind of bought up and pushed higher into the next couple of days as well. So these are very interesting times that we are in right now. You know, we've got a lot kind of being pushed through in terms of, you know, indecisions being made from both a global as well as an economic standpoint. So I think right now, what kind of does help in these scenarios is that we just sit back a bit. We let the sort of dust settle. We kind of figure out what sort of is happening and where the next steps are going to be going forward. And then we try plan our moves based on that. We try take that information in, we try analyze that data, try kind of forecast where we think fundamentally we're going to be pushing to in the next, say, quarter, 6 months, or whatever it may be. And then we plan our trading based on that. That's specifically how I try and position myself within the cryptocurrency space, as well as, say, the traditional space too. So if we have a look here, for example, let me just start, I'll kind of maybe declutter these charting tools a bit here. So if we just look at Bitcoin on a blank canvas right now, you can pretty much see we've got this resistance area happening over here, which is at around $73,000, which I mentioned yesterday in the daily technical analysis research article. If you did not already go through it, feel free to go and have a read through. So if we have a look here, this is pretty much where we are kind of, you know, trading into right now. Am I short-term bearish? Right now, if there is going to be any sort of bearish momentum, it will definitely be short pullbacks, similar to how we see it with gold, where we then kind of pick up and kind of push through into new all-time highs thereafter. So, you know, that is kind of why I'm thinking for this sort of area right now, I would like to see it kind of break through. I want to see price, I've mentioned this kind of in the previous streams as well. I want to see price really kind of break through this area, make a new distinct high, and then I can position myself based on that. You know, if we then start to get these pullbacks, you know, whether they be quite deep pullbacks or if they short pullbacks, we get them, we then analyze them, take into account what's happening fundamentally, and then we kind of look to kind of trade that going higher and into the foreseeable future. That's the whole idea here. That's specifically what we are looking for, right? So you can kind of see we've had pretty much, if I take these sort of, let's call them demand areas over here, that were kind of respected quite nicely. We also then had these internal support regions here. So let's just say, for example, we had to redefine it to these couple of scenarios here. You can pretty much see that we only really dipped our toes outside of that area maybe 1 or 2, 3 times this past year, and this has kind of been holding nicely since. So if I had to draw out here, pretty much, let's just summarize it to that. That would have been my major support level down there. And I mentioned this a couple weeks back, that if we did start to reject these internal areas, I wouldn't be surprised if we come down and test them further. However, considering where we are in terms of the cycles and where I think price will be going in the future, you know, for price to kind of dip back down here, yes, possible. However, where we are sitting right now, maybe not as possible as you would think. So I would like to kind of see these areas holding. If we do start to kind of trade lower, I would be looking at something like this. This sort of internal resistance area held briefly. We then had obviously this area here, which then turned into support. So let's just kind of clean it up a bit. Okay, so if I had to summarize it into these sort of 3 areas, this is what I would be looking at right now in Bitcoin. Okay, so if price does decide to kind of reject this area now quite nicely, then what I would look to do is pretty much analyze it from, this is my recent low that then pushed into this high here. I did kind of mention that if we do pull back a bit, you know, the 50% level of the Fibonacci tool is a really easy tool to use. And then when you obviously get those deep short pullbacks, you can climb into them, and then it's really easy to kind of jump on the momentum thereafter. So let's say hypothetically, this is our high over here and this is our low below. And if price does actually decide to hold in this resistance area now, then I wouldn't be surprised if we come and trade lower into, say, this region here, which would line up with around 66,000. So if we come and test this internal resistance area again, that turned into support, I wouldn't be surprised. However, I would like to see price push through here. So I wouldn't want to kind of play something like this, to be entirely honest. I would rather wait for the move to happen. So it would look something like this. So let's say price decides to trade higher in the next few days. I would like to rather wait for this move to happen. And then this would be my low over here. Okay, let me just draw that out a bit better. So if I had to analyze this, that would be, I want this to be my recent low, okay? And I want price to pretty much show me its hand. So I wanted to kind of go into, say, if we can trade as high as $80,000 before kind of turning back down, that would be quite interesting. Do I think we go that high in the short term? Definitely possible. However, what I'm trying to kind of make my point at is I would rather be interested in playing a trade idea where we push through here, okay? So we clear this high over here, which is at around 73, call it $74,000. We make a new high wherever that is. So if it's 79, if it's 77,000, if it's 80,000, whatever it may be, Then what I will be looking to do is pretty much take wherever that recent high is, use this recent low, mark out my Fibonacci tool based on that. So let's just say that price does trade into, say, 80,000 or whatever it may be. Then I would look to kind of capitalize on the pullback. So when price then pulls back, if we do get that pullback, then I would like to kind of jump in to a trade idea where I am then following the trend. Okay, so what I mean by that, so previously we were stuck in these regions over here. Okay, there was no real trend in this sort of area. Okay, however, if we start to break above here, right, even though on the higher time frame, yes, we are technically trending higher, I'm just talking in terms of if I'm actually wanting to scalp something and trade from a futures point of view or even a CFD's point of view, I would like to have a little bit more confirmation that we are going to be trading into new price discovery area. So something like this would be ideal for me personally. I would like to see price kind of push higher, get the short pullback that kind of lines up with your 50% level on the Fibonacci tool, and then I would look to kind of jump into some sort of long position off the back of that, have my stops below the recent low, which then would be my invalidation area, and then I would look to kind of trade into new highs wherever that may be. So that is definitely something from a more swing perspective. So I would describe this as a bit more of a swing trade. That is something I would be looking for specifically, but obviously right now that is not necessarily something we can take right now because we need price to show us its hands. We could still come back down here first and then trade higher before analyzing something like this. So I think next week's live session with the elections coming on, that could be quite interesting. I think that's definitely going to be quite a good time to kind of analyze things from both the fundamental and technical perspective. So that is something how I would look to potentially look into longs right now. I wouldn't really try and short the market right now purely because momentum is definitely against you, right? So let's say you were looking to kind of short something in here and have your stop below, you just kind of opening yourself up to be liquidated in some shape or form. You know, you've probably got a lot of stop orders sitting above here too. So when that happens, you sometimes get this pretty much, I want to call it manipulation, where you're sitting in a sort of pocket where you are most likely going to get pushed out of, right? So I wouldn't really be looking right now to be shorting Bitcoin exactly. I'd rather wait for it to show me its hands and then kind of trade the discounted pullbacks and look for sort of high time pushes, right? So that's pretty much my idea on Bitcoin. If I wanted to then take this analysis and forecast, right, and replicate it into, say, Ethereum, okay, which in my opinion now is lagging a bit in comparison to the rest of the cryptocurrency market, how could I maybe take that idea and then massage it into, say, trading an altcoin? Okay, it's quite simple. So depending on what altcoin you'd like to trade, because a lot of them are still sitting quite low down in their pockets, right? You can pretty much either do the same thing. So for example, like Ethereum here, this is also kind of still stuck within this range. So if you have a look here, I'll just demark those off. So if I have a look here, right, this would be my range high here. This would be my range low here. And if you have a look now, so until we kind of push through these areas, pretty much the same as what you're looking at Bitcoin, you would want to wait some sort of push to the upside, then pretty much get some sort of pullback, and then when you get that pullback, capitalize on it, right? So what you could do, and this is something I was actually mentioning a couple of weeks back on Ethereum specifically, is if you think price is going to push through quite dramatically in the next few days, and you think that this is going to be the lowest point in which, say, Ethereum would trade, then what you could do is you could look to kind of get in on, say, a stop order entry okay, which would be something like that. You would then have your stop loss below like that, or depending if you want to keep it in the range. I rather would like to pretty much have myself protected. So if this is going to be my extreme low in this scenario, I would only want to really get stopped out of that position based on that invalidation point. And then if I wanted to target, say, these higher time frame highs, which would be pretty much our high that we made this year, it would look something like that. So how can you do that? There's two ways you can do it, right? So you can either wait for price to break through, okay? And this is where I'm going to jump onto the terminal right after this to show you. So if you wanted to take some long positions, say from here, you would look to try and get into a stop order position. However, if you wanted to be a bit more conservative, because if you have a look here, right, you've pretty much seen our prices attempt to trade into this resistance area once, didn't really get there. We then traded into it about a week ago, got into it, rejected it, and then we traded a bit lower. So we pretty much still just accumulating, right? I kind of call this like my accumulation phase, and then you look to try and get some sort of breakout. So you can, the conservative way would be to wait for this area to break, okay? And then you would want to try and pretty much either get in on a retest, if there is a retest, and then look to trade momentum higher. However, if you think that this is the lowest point, for example, for Ethereum right now, what you could do is something like a stop order. So you could pretty much have a stop order, say on this high here at around $2,820. Your low would be around there, so you would want to cover yourself there, and you would want to trade back into the high. So how can you do that on the PrimeXBT platform? Really easy. That's kind of where I want to take you now. So if you have not already signed up an account, do so by going on our main PrimeXBT page. Really easy to do so. I've already got an account set up here, so all my funding is already sitting in here. And if I had to now look at this trade idea, right, how would I go about doing it, right? You've got two options. One option is you can either do it through the CFDs trading platform. Another option is through the crypto futures platform. So I've shown a few examples, or quite a lot of examples on the futures platform, but I thought, let me just maybe show you today how you could enter into, say, an ETH trade idea on the CFD platform using the same techniques and the same ideas, okay? So what you would need to do, you need to deposit into your account, right? Once the funding is sitting in your account, you would then need to make the necessary transfer. So I know I do mention this quite often, but unfortunately, when you come onto, say, the trading exchange, such as the terminal for CFDs, you're gonna have zero capital sitting in there, even though you've made a deposit. It's not necessarily meaning that your money is gone or it's not sitting there. It's just sitting in your main wallet account address, which basically is non-related to any exchanges. So what you'll need to do is transfer the funding out into the relevant exchange, and then you can start trading. So for example, if you have a look here, I've got, say, some USD Tether, some Ethereum and Bitcoin, whatever it may be that you have sitting in your account. I would then go transfer. I choose the desired account. So for today's example, I'm going to do CFDs trading example, and you can already see I've got some funding in that account, but let's just maybe top it up a bit and I'll show you. You then make that transfer out of your wallet address into your CFDs trading account. When you then go and click on CFDs trading, it will then load up with your account balance, so you'll be able to see it over here. So I'm not sure if you can see on my mouse, but you'll have your balance, equity, unrealized profit, whatever it may be. So I'm actually in no trades here at the moment, so this is actually quite a nice example. And if we have a look here, I've got some positions. I'll just close these for tutorial purposes. I want to show you exactly how you can do it on ETH. So if you have a look over here, underneath where it says trade, it's got a little thing that says CFD right now. You click on that drop down, you've got a few options. So the options are all markets, CFDs, crypto, and Forex. So if you want to go filter through all markets, you can pretty much see any asset there that you want to trade. It's all in alphabetical order. So if you would like to go and filter for the various currencies you're looking for, it will be all there for you. So if you have a look here, you can already see ETH USD is sitting over there. If you want to go for a specific exchange or industry, then you can go and choose. So for example, let's just say I want to only look at crypto. I select crypto, drops down all the crypto relevant pairs. Then you can see we've got, for example, here a couple of options. Your first option being ETH-BTC, second option being ETH-USD. Now I want to trade ETH versus the dollar, so I would choose ETH versus, or ETH-USD. That's the ticker name for Ethereum. It'll then pop up looking something like this. Okay, now this has pretty much got all the default indicators and settings here. So if you want to kind of move your chart around, you just drag and drop it a bit. And if you have a look here on the side, you might not be able to see it, but you've got some numbers written down. That's pretty much the sort of y-axis in this scenario. And if you have a look there, you can drag and drop that too. So let's say, for example, I now wanted to put in a stop order. So I've explained this in a couple of scenarios, but basically a stop order acts the same way as like a limit entry. However, if you're trading below a certain area and you want to get in at a higher price, only when you get that confirmed break in structure, that's when you can pretty much use these stop orders to your advantage, right? Because sometimes price might just go through, not really trade back, and then continue, and you don't get into the trade. So how would you do that? Pretty simple. So you've got two options. You can either sell or buy. I'm not going to be selling. I would like to place a buy stop. So I would just click on the buy button. Then you'll see here, you'll pop up this new order widget, right? Now, this pretty much will show you a couple of things. One being the symbol. So make sure you've got the correct symbol set. Don't, obviously, if you're wanting to trade Bitcoin or Ethereum, make sure you have selected the correct ticker. Don't go trade a different ticker and then not really understand why the trade idea is working out to your favor because you're on a different ticker. So you can change that over here if you need to. Then you've got a couple of order type examples. So for example, if you have a look here, you've got market order, limit order, stop order. Okay, so that word stop is your stop order, which is what I want to do, which is a buy stop in my scenario. So I would then need to go select that. You will now see it will give me an option to choose a price at which I will place a buy stop. So if you have a look here, we wanted to place a buy stop at around 2,820. So I would then go manually type that in. Okay. And then you can obviously go over here and choose the amount of Ethereum or contracts that you would like to enter. If you don't understand how to calculate the risk based on that, then what I would suggest doing is marking out the low. So in this scenario, the low would be around $2,100. I would then click on this little box. So underneath where it says margin impact, you see it now. If I click it, it will give me my protection order. So I can do one of two things with this. I can place a stop loss and I can place a take profit level. So if I click on place stop loss, it will then give me a stop loss estimate. I would need to obviously go and change that. So let's say, for example, I want my stop loss to be at around, let's say I want it to be around $2,100. I would then need to go change. So for example, let's say I had it on 100. That means I'm going to lose $71,000 if I get stopped out of this position. I don't have that amount of funding in this account, so I actually cannot place this order. So I need to go and change that. You can go and do so by just either filtering around with the numbers. So let's say, for example, you've got, in my case, I've got $6,000, right? So let's say I want to risk 1%, or let's say I want to be a bit more risk averse, and I want to maybe risk a 0.5%. How could I calculate that? So it's pretty simple. You take your account balance, times that by 1%. It'll give you a value of say $60. That basically means if the trade goes against you, you've now lost 1% of your trade idea. So let's say, for example, I wanted to risk 10% of my account in this example, then it would be $600. Okay. So for today's tutorial, I'm just going to play around with the figure of around, say, I'll go in with 2% risk. So I'll double it. So 120. and I'll need to go and manually punch that in until I get the correct figure. So if you have a look here, I just kind of play around with the numbers in terms of the amount until I get that exact figure. So if you have a look now, I enter 0.17 contracts at 2820 as a buy stop. If I get stopped out at $2,100 in this scenario, I'll get stopped out for $120. I'm happy with that. That makes sense. So I'll go and send the order. Go confirm it. Okay. And if you have a look now, I'll try and move this purple line. So where you have your drawings, I'm going to go and get rid of that. And if I have a look over here, I've got a couple of things. So I'm just going to leave it like that. You should still be able to see that. Okay. So now if you have a look, okay, I've gone and placed a buy order, stop order entry at 2820 for 0.17 contracts. If I click on where it says plus SL, that will tell me where my stop loss is. So it brings it up like that with this red line. Really easy to use. And if I want to drag and drop that, I can easily just modify my stop loss really easily. So let's say I would like to enter these longs. I would leave my stop loss like this. I go confirm. Okay, but now in this scenario, I don't have a take profit. So how do I go about doing that? Let's say, for example, I would like to target this back to the new highs of say $4,000. Then I would simply go click back on my position. So underneath where it says where I've got here trade crypto symbol, you will have your section where it says orders. So that is going to be an active live order that will sit there until you cancel it. So remember, it's not going to be an active order until price gets to there. So it could take a couple of days, could take a couple of weeks, it could take an hour. So that order would just sit there now. And let's say I want my take profit to be around $4,000 in this example. I will then have something looking like this. So here I will then go and replace that. Okay. And then the same way, so if I zoom out a bit now, I'm not sure if you can still see, but in the same way I viewed my stop loss, I will be able to also view my take profit. So I click on that button. Now you can see here's my take profit level sitting at around $4,000. Let's say I want to adjust that and make it a bit higher. I want it around 4,100. I can simply just drag and drop it a little bit higher and then leave it. It will then ask me, do I want to confirm doing this? I will then say yes. I go edit and replace and I go confirm. Done. So now my stop loss and my take profit will be set. And if I click back on this position size tool over here, it will now tell me that my stop loss, my projected stop loss would be $120. And if the take profit level gets hit, I'll make $200. So it's really easy to use. It's really simple to use. That's how I would go about setting this sort of stop idea for this buy entry on Ethereum. And that's pretty much just a summary of how you can use the sort of limit or entry orders we have on the PrimeXBT platform. This is specifically with regards to the CFD trading. So it's really easy to use. I love the platform. It's really user friendly and you've obviously got a lot of features. You can also step into the crypto futures side, and if that's something you want to go and enter orders onto, that's really easy to do as well. So that's pretty much it from my side today. So thanks for joining the live stream. I really appreciate the support and I will see you guys at next week's stream. We've got an exciting stream coming up for that one. That is going to be a post-US elections live stream. So I'm going to go over a bit of analysis based on what's happening in the markets thereafter. I'm also going to go into some deeper sort of fundamentals depending on the results of the elections. So make sure you don't miss out on that one. It's going to be quite an exciting one, and that will be next week, Wednesday, same time, same place. So I'll see you guys next week, and thank you for tuning in and thank you for sending all the questions in. So have a good week, everyone.